So we're going to shift the conversation toward the fashion direction. We had a dinner last night, and I feel like I should bring this up because several people said to me, wait, so fashion and sustainability, isn't that like an oxymoron or something? And I feel like that conversation comes up a lot in spaces or like adjacent spaces to fashion in the sustainability conversation. So I'm curious to hear what all of you have to say when we get to the Q&A, but I want to dive straight in and start talking with all these amazing folks. So when we were talking about what we aligned on, what were kind of, top of mind for all of you, we kept coming back to this idea of creativity being part of what leads you to innovation. And so I think to start with, it'd be great to hear just from all of you, like, what does creativity in general mean to you in the way you're interacting with fashion?
Totally. Hello, everyone. I don't know if I should intro myself or what.
I know. I tend to want to get straight in.
Let's dive in.
Because
Let's go
I feel
for
like
it.
it's going to surface.
Let's dive. Let's go. Hey, everyone. I'm Amanda. Creativity. So creativity to us at Woven and just to myself personally, I think is so important when it comes to not only fashion, but also building movements. And for us, we really believe that creativity and fashion itself can be a really expressive way to get more and more people involved in sustainable fashion, but also in important movements. My background is actually in climate organizing and grassroots organizing, so I'm really interested in that intersection between art and activism and how you bridge those two things together. And at Woven, something that we really like to do is we like to show you that sustainable fashion doesn't have to be boring. I think a lot of people think that sustainable fashion is like boring white cotton t-shirts and like blacks and browns, and yes, I know I'm wearing a lot of brown today, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very vibrant, it can be bold, it can be unique. We have a lot of really bold prints and patterns in our clothing, and that's just one way that we're showing people that this movement is for everyone and there's a space for you. Another way that we utilize creativity in this movement building and in fashion itself is just the way we communicate our values to our community. We like to make sustainable education really fun and cool and edgy in our branding and all the ways that we're communicating with our audience. I think a really awesome example of this is through our impact reports. So 2 years ago is when we released our first ever Sustainable Fashion Impact Report. And we wanted to really highlight in that report, obviously, all the different work that we were doing. We wanted to be really transparent about our footprint and be accountable to our production processes and all of that stuff. But we also wanted to make a report that was really beautiful and fun and that people actually wanted to read. Every brand out there has a sustainability report, and I don't know if any of you have ever read them. They're usually pretty dense and long, so we designed this report that was really fun. It was elegant, it had pops of colors, but it also had the hard science and data in it. And we ended up posting it, and we had thousands and thousands of people sharing this report because it was really engaging and fun to consume. So for us, we use creativity to bring people into the movement and have people share the knowledge that we're trying to spread.
Yeah, I love that. Hi, everybody. Okay, so for us, creativity, the way that we think about creativity is not accepting things at face value. And so how we've adopted that is by meeting the shopper where they're at, trying to understand people's behavior, why they're shopping the way that they're shopping. And we actually started Benny because we heard very often people would say, oh, I know I should shop secondhand, but I just don't. It's too time consuming and I don't want to learn a new way of shopping. So we created an extension that makes it easier for you to shop secondhand online by serving secondhand versions of what you're shopping for when you're shopping on the internet side by side. And we continue to ask ourselves a question every day of how we can deliver the best value for the shopper, how to make resale as accessible as possible to everybody, no matter where they come from or their situation. So,
for us at Triarchy, I think creativity means really restricting that lens. So I think in fashion, you think the world is my oyster, let's design, 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 but that's where all the overconsumption and the irresponsibility comes into play. So I think I have it easy because I'm in denim, so, you know, it's a fabric that has timelessness inherently built into it, but we really do restrict that lens, and we don't allow ourselves to work outside of a few colors that we know we can work with responsibly. And then through that restriction, we find that there's actually so much that can be done in those tiny little lenses, and it never ends. So it's not more is more, it really is less is more in this sense, to just restrict the creativity lens as much as possible so that you're never outside of that responsibility, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And it goes hand in hand with like that sentiment that creativity comes with constraints, which I think is so powerful. And it's like when you take a couple of the things out of, or you just take buying out of the equation, like, oh, I'm going to take a break from shopping for a couple of months. And then you look in your closet and you realize, oh, wow, I have all of these things that I haven't been wearing. You know, like what we wear, like estimates are like 60% of our closet we don't wear. So they're just like hanging there and getting no love all day. So I think that's a really good point and something that really does come into play in different capacities when you think about creativity. So that's kind of, you know, how you're thinking about creativity, but how does that lead to innovation for the way you're designing? And so maybe it's helpful for Adam and Amanda, for you to kind of dive in first, because you're coming from like this designer lens, and then you can chime in with your tech lens.
I'll start off. Yeah, I mean, I think creativity is so important when it comes to obviously design, but I think also just when it comes to problem solving. So for all fashion brands, we all, whether you're sustainable or not, we all go through similar problems. And one problem I did want to highlight was just the management of excess inventory is a major problem. It's one that we recently just went through, and we had to be very creative of how we were solving this problem and how we were gonna kind of redesign our own supply chain to manage it in the future. So last summer, we were relocating our warehouse that was based in LA, so that meant that our whole team had to go out to our warehouse. We had to pack up all of the inventory that we had stored there. We had to recount thousands and thousands of pieces of clothing. We had to get rid of office supplies and furniture and all of that. And we had to do it all within like 2 weeks. It was crazy. So we all got together and we were like, hey, there's really two main things we need to focus on with this transition. One, we need to make sure we do this as fast as possible, but also with as limited amount of waste as possible. So we had to get really creative of how we were solving this problem, and we really tackled it in a few different ways by reducing, reusing, and reselling a lot of the products that we were coming across. So as we were clearing out the warehouse, we actually uncovered a lot of vintage clothes and a lot of older styles that we hadn't seen in years, you know, exclusive prints and styles that we were selling back when we were just vending at like yoga and music festivals. So we had all this clothing that is no longer on our website, that we're no longer selling, and we were like, okay, what are we gonna do with this? So we ended up packing it all into boxes, storing it in my shed, like 30 to 40 giant boxes of clothing, and then we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? So the first thing we did was we reduced. So we didn't design new clothes for the end of the year. We didn't place a new order. We didn't go into new production cycles. We said, hey, let's utilize what we've got. And we ended up selling these like bundled mystery bags at the end of the year. And it ended up being the most successful launch that we had the whole year. Our audience loved them. They were so excited about buying some of our vintage stuff. So we reduced in that way. We were also able to reuse a lot of the clothing through clothing donations. So we connected with a lot of local nonprofit organizations. We asked them like, hey, this is what we've got. Do you guys need this? And we were able to connect with a lot of local groups through our 1% for the Planet partnership. and donate over $30,000 worth of clothing, which was really awesome and a great way to reuse that. And then lastly, a really creative solution we came up with was just being able to resell the clothes and remarket it to people and say, hey, this isn't just like old stuff that was sitting in a warehouse. This is durable, great clothing that our community hasn't seen in years. It's vintage style. It's exclusive. Like, we're never making these things ever again. They're very unique. Let's resell it. So we put it on our own branded resale site. And we're actually about to launch a partnership with Poshmark this week, where we're going to sell the rest of this inventory. It's out of my shed, and it's being sold to people in resale markets. So yeah, long story short, I think creativity is a great way to solve problems, and especially from the sustainability lens, just making sure that all the problems you are solving are rooted in sustainability.
I love that. I love that you actually didn't design more until you could utilize what you had. That's amazing. I would say our most recent example of creativity fostering innovation would be our refusal to work with plastic. All stretch jeans that have ever existed are done so with crude oil-based plastic fibers. And we didn't want to do that because I think a lot of stretch jeans can resemble a plastic bag more than a traditional pair of jeans that we all know and love. But in our refusal to work with plastic, we ended up developing the world's first plastic-free stretch, which uses natural rubber in place of crude oil plastic. Which was incredible because it also meant that we could sell stretch jeans again, which, as you can imagine, is really challenging for a women's denim brand that doesn't have stretch. However, when we were doing the composting tests of this fabric, stretch jeans will usually sit in a landfill for around 200 years, toxifying the soil while they go. And our plastic-free stretch will biodegrade in 1 to 2 years under the right conditions. And what we found with the soil tests was that our fabric was actually fertilizing the soil and making it healthier. So what we ended up doing was growing a crop of tomatoes using the plastic-free stretch as fertilizer. And that was successful. We harvested it, turned it into tomato sauce, and then served it at the Green Carpet Fashion Awards last month with our partners Candiani and EcoAge and Quinto Sapore. And it was just, the point is, none of that was ever planned. It was just plastic-free stretch. How do we do that? And then all of these incredible things start taking place, and it's like, oh, if you actually apply that restricted lens, don't get out of it. And I mean, how many times did I meet with denim suppliers who would show me a room full of swatches, and I'd be like, I can't look at any of that because it's all plastic. And they're like, well, what are you gonna do? You need to work with it. And I'm like, man, I don't think you do. And then after a while, you don't. So, tomatoes.
I love that story. Yeah, I feel really basic these days using the word AI, but we've used we use a lot of AI in our technology. It is what makes, I mean, all the recent innovations in artificial intelligence are what makes our extension possible. As you can imagine, resale data, everything is one of one. We don't have any SKU level information, and a lot of it is photographs of shoes on boxes and clothing hung on doors and laying on beds, or you wearing an outfit to a wedding that is now the hero image of the item you're trying to sell. Rarely do you remember the actual name of the product when you put it up. Sometimes you spell the brand wrong. We all make mistakes. And so it's actually very complicated for us to find a secondhand version of what you're shopping for when you're shopping on the internet. We do a lot of, object detection and background cropping and everything that we can do to capture as much detail as possible, both with the image and with whatever, textual data that we can get from the products to do the matching. And we're always working on our ranking algorithms. So, yeah, I don't think we would have existed as a technology if it wasn't for all of the recent innovations in artificial intelligence over the last couple of years. So we're thankful for that. Yeah.
On that note, I feel like, there's so many questions circulating around, like the ethics around AI. There's so many questions because it's something new, something different, lots of unknowns. Is that something you grapple with in your work or something you're confronted with?
It's hard to say because I feel like there's so much conversation around AI and creativity specifically. I feel like for my role, AI has allowed us to be more creative and innovative because all of a sudden there's a technology that's a lot more accessible to you that can help you innovate in ways that you might have previously only been able to do with a data scientist. Like, we use large language models to help us train other models to make what we do possible. And a lot of that information to utilize these technologies, it's the frontier and everybody's kind of learning it together. And so pretty much anybody can get their hands on this technology and learn it and utilize it to their advantage. On the contrary, there are a lot of issues in this day and age with the creativity of, you know, all of the data that has gone into creating these models and not properly accrediting artists and whatnot for that production. I know that Sam Altman at OpenAI and some of the others have talked about trying to create systems in which you can credit artists that have been involved in these works, or you can opt in or opt out your works or get paid for anything that was built on top of that. I'm not sure exactly how that is going to work, but I do think it is very necessary for a future with AI.
Yeah, thank you. I want to shift a little bit towards like the idea of longevity, because I think when we think about our clothing, longevity is massive because we wear our clothes a lot. They get washed, which damages them again, and can break them down depending. So when you think about today, the way the fashion industry has transformed, like we have fast fashion, we have ultra fast fashion now. We have brands that are like releasing up to 20,000 items a day sometimes, which is just wild to imagine. And with that has come like this alignment of our clothing with disposability, which is so like outrageous to think about when you look back, even just like our grandparents' generation. They didn't think about our clothes as disposable. They were, you know, you had less garments, you mended them. There's just like some of these basic aspects involved. So when you're thinking about designing, like how do you approach and think about or integrate longevity into the way you're designing?
Totally, yeah. We are a very wasteful society, guys. The average consumer discards one garment of clothing only after 7 or 8 wears. So, yeah, crazy. Like, think about like the top you're wearing right now. Like, how many times have you worn that? If it's close to 7 or 8, the average person would be throwing it out or getting rid of it, which is crazy. So one way that we're tackling this problem and avoiding this waste and designing for clothes to be to last longer and to be, you know, in your closet for a longer period of time is through multifunctional design. So at Woven, we're really known for designing pieces that you can wear more than one way. We have a 4-way top that's reversible. You can wear it 2 different ways and then reverse it from a print to a basic. So there's more options within one shirt. You're giving consumers an opportunity to do more with less, which is really appealing. We even have an 8-way one piece, which the first time I ever saw it and I learned that it was an 8-way one piece, I was like, okay, like how can you possibly wear this 8 ways? And like I remember like trying to like play with it, and there is 8 ways to wear it. There's detachable pieces. It's also reversible. It's really creative. It's a swimsuit that also doubles as a bodysuit. So just designing things that have more function and are actually just really fun to play around with is something that we love to do. In some of the newer collections that we're designing, other than just making like a top you can wear multiple ways, we're designing products that can serve multiple functions. Like, so for example, our workwear capsule, which I am sporting today, is designed with the same fabric as our athleisure wear, as our yoga wear. So you can wear this in a very professional setting, but it's also soft and super comfy. So you could also wear it, you know, to a meditation session or something like that. So we're really designing to think about clothes in how can this one item serve me in multiple ways, and really just designing for durability as well. And then as soon as you get to that point in that clothing's life cycle where you're like, hey, this this isn't my style anymore, this product no longer serves me, that 4-way top can go into a resale market. It's designed to be durable. Another person can utilize it. They can wear that top multiple ways at multiple different events in their life, and it can just prolong the life of that one garment and increase the function in your own closet. Instead of having like a million different tops, you can just have less that do more. So.
I mean, again, I think that I have it easy because I'm in denim. It's, I mean, timeless, and you can repair jeans so easily, constantly. I think that I have jeans that I've repaired the holes in over a dozen times, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And then also with that restricted lens thing, like when we design something we like this shirt, next season, when the sales team asks us for a new shirt, we just do this shirt again in a different color or a different fabric. Like, we don't design another shirt because this is enough. And a lot of the times we'll go to market and the buyers will say like, oh, why isn't the collection bigger? And it's like, you just need more things to say no to. Like, just, this is good. Let's just work with this. And I think with denim too, it's nice because it's like, this is all from the women's line, what I'm wearing. But like, what? Like, it's fine. So again, I have it easy because denim. But.
Love it, love it. Celine, so you're not necessarily like designing garments, but you're thinking about, you know, an online experience, and it made me think about the disposability question with relation to what you're doing. So like, for example, I'm not sure if anyone has heard about Vestiaire Collective, but they're one of the big luxury resale sites out there. And they recently launched a fast fashion ban, banning all fast fashion items from their platform. And so I was thinking about that sort of thing, thinking about these sort of, you know, initiatives to like dismiss certain secondhand items and the complications of that conversation, because it's very unclear and very blurry, you know, and people have very diverse perspectives on it. But I'm curious if that sort of idea of secondhand and disposability, if that's coming into play when you're thinking about like what items you offer to shoppers.
That's a really great question, and you will hear a lot of very different opinions. I think the way that we're thinking about it is that we're ultimately trying to keep things in circulation for as long as possible. There was already a lot that went into the production of that clothing, even if it's in not great condition to begin with. And so we do our best to try to keep it in circulation. Fast fashion is not great. So ultimately what we try to focus on instead is to help consumers ladder up. If they can't necessarily afford to buy a sustainable item new, then ideally through resale, we can make buying that sustainable item more affordable for all shoppers, and therefore making sustainability more accessible to people. Hopefully by being able to allow brands to capture some of the value from resale, they are less beholden to creating new products all the time. And that can help incentivize slow fashion ultimately by creating a higher quality, more durable good. You can recapture the value of an item being sold on the resale market for significantly more. And you can probably capture the value of it being sold on the resale market again and again and again. So hopefully we can live in a world in which like new and used are living side by side and are accessible to all shoppers. And we can ban fast fashion. But until that happens, we're gonna do what we can to keep clothing in circulation.
Agreed on all points. As a signal, though, I think that it's nice because it signals that it's not valuable enough for that. So then hopefully it would influence people to consume those virgin products less because they know like, oh, I can't really find an afterlife for that in the same way. So less is more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know that necessarily that it's by, I don't know that not allowing like Shein in resale is disincentivizing Shein from producing in the first place. They've already used resources to create that item of clothing, and ideally shoppers are not buying that. But if it's already out there and somebody wore it only once, if somebody else wants to buy it on Poshmark and wear it also once for $5,
2 onces are better than 1 once.
2 onces are better than 1 once. That's true.
I mean, Shein is pervasive. I myself was at a secondhand store and found this like sweater vest a few years ago, and I was like, oh, okay, I think I'll wear this. And I look at the tag, trying to find what it is. No label, can't find it. Take it home, wash it, realize there's this tiny little tag in the side, and it's Shein. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what? I can't have Shein. How is this possible? And so it was very like overwhelming, and I felt very disturbed that I had purchased it. But then I was like, I talked to some friends about it, and they were like, well, the more you wear it, the more you're basically like shoving it in their face, because you're resisting the intention of it to be disposable. So I try to wear it as much as possible.
So now it's your favorite thing, and you just wear it nonstop.
Take that, Shein.
Are you wearing it right now?
I'm not wearing it right now. I couldn't. I would feel too exposed.
I will say, a lot of my thrifted pieces are Zara. A lot of my thrifted pieces are fast fashion. And I think like the moral and what you were kind of explaining is like not letting perfection be the enemy of the good. And ultimately, it's going to take a lot of advocacy and grassroots movement building and policy to get those big fashion giants to stop overproducing and hopefully just stop producing in general low quality products. But yeah, I think it's like we're all on this journey together. And for now, if resale markets do have those items in there, like at least it's in resale now. And we're still finding the best solutions to avoid the greater problems.
Yeah, for sure. It is overwhelming if you look back at like the thrifting scene or the secondhand scene, and you realize how much those labels have infiltrated all of the spaces now quite rapidly. So I think there's like a lot of nuance and layers with that, and I feel like we're starting to get deeper into that gradually. But yes, I think maybe a 1 and 1 is better than a 1. I think that maths, right?
There's one thing to take from this.
Okay, so I think I want to just touch on technology, which I think is a good lead into our next panel, and which I didn't preface before. We are going to have another fashion panel after this one because there's so many layers to this conversation, and it's just very complicated and hard to jam all into 35 minutes. So with that in mind, I think tech or innovation in our society now has very much been deemed with like, it often gets aligned as like the golden ticket to what's going to save us from the climate crisis. And often it's very much forward in the fashion space as well. And I think absolutely it's powerful as far as like reimagining different business models and that sort of thing. But I think there's layers to that. It's not so simple. And I think technology can mean many things to different people. So I guess for all of you, what role do you feel like technology plays in the way you're approaching the sustainability conversation and the way you're bringing products or selling products in a market that is very tech focused nowadays?
Totally, yeah. So we're actually really interested in exploring digital fashion and how, I'll say it, Web3 is could be a force for good in the fashion industry. So I think there's like so much to unpack there, and I won't dive into all of it, but if anyone wants to chat, come find me. But one of the technologies that we're starting to explore is digital fashion and how it can help designers and creatives avoid excess waste when it comes to production. So there's a lot of really cool new softwares and platforms out there, Clo 3D, Spark AI, that are allowing designers to design digital mock-ups of their production samples before actually going into sampling. So normally when you're creating a new product, you would have to sample all of these things. And for us at Woven, it's really important that because we're very print focused, we need to see like where the prints are aligning on our garments, how it's stretching when you're doing yoga, all that kind of stuff. And these softwares allow you to put a digital avatar on your screen. You can mock up products on a digital avatar of all different body sizes. This model can move around, and you can even program into it what kind of fabric this digital avatar is wearing, and you can see how that fabric is moving on the model's body. So whether you're using a recycled fabric or a reclaimed cotton, whatever it is, these new digital fashion models can actually show you what that looks like and how it will wear over time. So that's something we're super interested in. And then something else I wanted to touch on, which is totally new for us, but something we tried out last year, is using AR, like augmented reality, and utilizing that in terms of creating just new things we can offer our community aside from like an actual physical product. So last year we released this new sustainable streetwear capsule, and along with the capsule, we also worked with a team at a company called Renegades to design these AR filters that coincide with the collection, and we used these digital filters to market the collection. And it was just a really cool way to get people to engage with our community, to learn more about digital fashion. And we really viewed it just as like step one for how we can utilize these new creative solutions to make fashion more fun and less wasteful. So stay tuned for more, and always down to talk about digital fashion stuff. So.
For us, it would be transparency, working with a third-party auditor to basically do a life cycle assessment for everything we make. And so every pair of jeans that Triarchy makes has a QR code inside, and you can scan it, and you can see where we grew the cotton. You can download the organic cotton certificates. You can see where our factory is. You can call them if you want. It's all exposed under that digital passport, and that is only available via tech, and it really is incredible because it's not like a brand metric, it's an actual garment per garment thing. And so I think that there's really no room for greenwashing if somebody takes steps like that to expose the entire production and supply chain. And I really think the only way is with a third-party auditor, because everything that I set up here today could be a lie. I've never seen a tomato in my life. But if you have someone else, vetting the stuff I'm talking about and then publishing it via those QR codes and stuff, then that's the best we can do, and I think it's sufficient.
I think I gave my piece on AI. I don't think you guys.
You don't have anything else to add about tech?
What do you want to know?
I mean, what led you to choose like a heavy tech solution to what's happening with fashion and sustainability? Because people go so many different routes. Like, we need more products. We need to, reimagine something in the supply chain, whether it's textiles and materiality. But you went to like, let's create this, browser add-on that helps consumers or shoppers. Like, why was that the tech that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It kind of goes back to what I had said earlier about meeting the shopper where they are, which is at the core of what we do. And my co-founder, when she started Benny, pretty much there was a hack that her and her friends used to do, which is find something they want to buy through like beautifully well-branded brand websites that they spend countless hours like creating a very nice catalog and models and pictures and everything. So you find something that you want to buy, and then you have to scour the world of resale yourself by opening a billion tabs on Poshmark and eBay and wherever and doing all these comparisons side by side. And that just doesn't really make sense for most people. Nobody has, well, unless you're like a thrift store, not a lot of people have time for that. And if we want to make change in the sustainable fashion space, resale is a really big part of that. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation had a stat that said if 1 in 5 garments are traded through circular business models like secondhand, we would be significantly closer to hitting our fashions-related emissions reductions targets. So our goal was, how can we get 1 in 5? 1 in 5 is not that hard. I think I was talking to somebody last night. It's like doing meatless Mondays. You can buy 1 out of 5 things secondhand, but how can we arm people to be able to do that as easily as possible? And I think the browser extension was really the only way for us to actually help you not have to open up a million tabs by looking for that thing for you. Then we put it right in front of your face while you're shopping on the brand's website. So yeah, we partner with over 45 resale marketplaces. We have a catalog of over 200 million listings, the largest aggregated database of online resale clothing and accessories in the US, which is very exciting. And with our amazing technology, we can essentially find you a secondhand version of what you're shopping for in 3 seconds or less. So
Awesome.
Amazing. All right, great. So we'll open up for questions if anyone has anything they're curious about.
So with fashion, and I get to hang out online, I guess, with some younger Gen Z age groups because my son is a 17-year-old, so I'm hanging in that space right now with all of his girlfriends, not girlfriends. But a lot of them, you know, are talking back and forth. Hey, what are you wearing? I mean, Shein comes in, obviously, was like, oh, have you tried it, do this, that? I'm now seeing, even for my age, women of a certain age, now people are modeling and telling you live how the fabric feels, it walks like this, it does like that. My question is, where does social media come in as the hero or the villain in trying to pursue sustainability and fashion away and secondhand selling?
I could gladly jump into this one because I actually I feel really strongly about this exact topic, that I actually don't think that sustainability is as much of a conversation about all the things that we're talking about up here as much as it is the conditioning of reaction to impulse that we are all being subjected to. And if everyone owned their own individual reaction to impulse time, like I employ a thing that I call the 5-minute rule. If I'm shopping online or in real life and I find something that I want to buy, I put it down and I let the dopamine rush of that excitement pass, and then I come back. And if I still want it, I buy it. 9 out of 10 times I don't, because I'm like, oh, that was just because I want it. And the problem, I think, I grew up without smartphones and social media, so I have the ability to switch into those roles. But if you're a child who's been conditioned on these platforms, it's pretty grim. I don't know how, and if it's just reaction to impulse, and then the problem is you have so many people building so many brands that are just like, oh, brilliant, we can just cater to this, and then that's where I stop talking.
Yeah.
I have no solution. I'm just saying you have to own your reaction to impulses and be more mindful, and then you'll find sustainability because it's fewer better things. And it's just, I think, what we naturally gravitate towards when we don't have shiny screens in front of us.
Totally. Definitely agree with that. One thing I'd like to add, kind of on the more optimistic side, I think, I personally really view social media as a powerful tool to, especially when it comes to fashion and running a fashion brand that has like a very large platform on social media. Fashion has the ability to connect and tap in to so many different types of people. You know, the people who come, for example, to our page on social media aren't just there because they care about sustainability. They're not just there because they're environmentalists. They're there because they like fashion, or they like some of the blog content we're sharing. And our audience is just really diverse. We have like young Gen Z fashion TikTokers. We have like older yoga moms. We have like festival girls, and just like a whole diverse community of people. And I think that we can really use social media and our platforms to get important, sustainable messaging and educational topics out to people who may not normally be in those spheres or those spaces. Like I think in the first panel, we were talking about echo chambers. And I personally have worked for an environmental nonprofit, and I used to think that all businesses were completely evil and bad and horrible, and that the only place to make positive change was by working at a nonprofit and being an environmental organizer. And I really see now that there's just so many different ways that people can get involved in important movement building, and it's just about being creative. And I do think that social media has a place to reach all these different people and bring them along for the ride. So
I think it does, but I think it also is important to just have self-awareness because for all of us, because fast fashion and fast media are inextricably linked. Like the majority of what we see on social media nowadays is selling us something. And so we're being told, and we're also demeaning our mental health. Like we're being told, you're not skinny enough, you're not pretty enough, you don't have enough of this or enough of that. And so it's definitely leading us in a scary direction, I think, as like a whole. I think it's definitely a powerful tool, but I think there's a lot of layers to it, and I think it's something that we all need to be examining on a deeper level because we just interact with it, and it has a lot of power.
Yeah, that's really what I was thinking as well and what I was going to say. So I'm glad you spoke to that. I think that social media has really fueled consumption and very much the need to capture the latest trend. Anything that is trendy, trends used to be, they're cyclical, right? They used to be yearly, then they were quarterly, now they're daily, weekly, like less than weekly. They're all the time, trends are changing. On TikTok, there's a trend, all of a sudden you have to buy something and the next day it's out of style. So the one thing that I would say, it's crazy, I'm serious. The one thing that I would say is like, if you actually feel so inclined to participate in a trend, you might as well buy it secondhand. Don't buy it new.
Hi. Wow, this is really loud. Sorry. I wanted to ask about end of life, right? There's sometimes you just can't do secondhand anymore. You have to dispose of clothing. Where do you guys see just maybe clothing recycling or just repurposing of textiles going in the future? And any kind of innovation that you can share?
yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. I know, yeah, we've talked a lot about resale and secondhand, which is like only a small little fraction of the circular economy. I think there's a lot of potential with a lot of different solutions. You know, there's a lot of R's within the circular economy itself, reducing, reusing, recycling, repairing, recreating, all of that. And for us, we've explored a number of other end-of-life solutions. Resale is like step one, and then of course there's other ones. Textile recycling itself is something that we've trialed a few times, and that can definitely be very effective, but it definitely doesn't come without its challenges. It's really imperative the things that you are recycling are actually recyclable, and our recycling infrastructure itself, at least in the United States, is horrible. And you know, if you try to recycle something that has like more than 4 ingredients or things within it, it's almost impossible. So for example, our garments are really only made with 2 things. It's a recycled fabric and it's a sustainably sourced spandex. And that is fairly easy to pull apart, and you can recycle that down into something else. But other things like shoes, for example, if you look at the shoes you're wearing, they're created with a lot of different things, like up to 10 or 20 different things go into making one pair of shoes, and that is very difficult to recycle. So I think there's a lot of challenges with that solution, and I think it kind of always takes us back to step one, like when you're designing for circularity and just keeping those end-of-life solutions in mind at the first step of when you're designing things. Like, hey, if I'm gonna make something, in 10 years, 20 years, can this be recycled? So those are important questions I think you have to ask like day one if you're gonna make it something new.
Again, I think I have it easy because I work in denim. So it's a real resilient fabric. No, but that, like, just making sure that the garment is durable from the get-go and that it can be repaired as many times as possible. And then if all else fails, tomatoes.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us for this panel. We are going to move to our next one, so thank you to the amazing panelists for all of your insight and wisdom.